So to get started, I'm just going to log into ZAPP real quick. And I'm just going to pull up an event. So our very first tool is going to be our jury details page. So if you haven't ever filled out jury details before, it exists within your event editor. It is the second tab from left. And it's typically an optional section, but we always have recommended filling it out. In late 2020 or early 2021, this is going to be a lot more essential of a section to fill out if you are hosting a jury, because so many events are handling their cancellations and postponements in different ways. So some events are choosing to jury, from scratch in 2021, and some events are rolling over all or a portion of their artists from 2020. And so artists are going to really be looking for this information to see what they can expect from your event before applying. So you can just go through and fill some of these out. This is the average number of artists selected from the jury to participate in the event. So maybe we could say that's 250. And then the average number of jury exempt artists for, say, a 2021 event, maybe that's going to be, 200, because all of those people decide to roll over their booth products. Then you can go ahead and fill all of these other things out. They just provide additional information for your artists so that they can feel confident applying to your event. And that's going to be a big theme in 2020 and 2021 events, is just helping to increase the confidence that, their money is being put towards what they think it's going to be, and they feel secure in what they're essentially signing up for. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that now when an artist is on, main ZAPP and they're looking through the events list, once we implement the jury details enhancement that is going to make some questions required, artists will then be able to filter as well by juried and non-juried events. So they should be able to find your event and within either a juried or a non-juried list, just depending on how you're handling that process. Our second tool is going to be the custom questions. So application custom questions are found within the application editor and underneath your medium categories. If you haven't used them before, there's always the required description of materials and technique question that artists can save statements of technique for. If you've never edited this question, you can actually edit the character limit. So you can change the character limit, to 100, to 300, to 1,000. I know some of you guys read these statements aloud to your jurors. So if you want to control how long they are, you are absolutely welcome to do that. Beyond that, we have 5 types of custom questions you can create, and we've actually revamped our custom question editor. You can select the type through this modal that popped up, and it's going to be text, single select, multiple select, drop down, or informational only. All of these question types are the same as what they were before this enhancement. So if you're selecting, say, a text question, you'll have the option to enter a title. All the questions, you'll enter an internal title, and then of course you'll answer the question. You'll also be able to mark whether or not they're required. With text questions in particular, you can control the character limit. So one of the ways that we would see, maybe a text question used in 2021 is for an event that is rolling over 2020 applicants. You might want to verify that those applicants actually applied to your 2020 event and that they didn't, say, pass a coupon code amongst themselves, or just say that they were invited to your event. So what this type of question could look like is, say 2020 verification is the question title. And the question could be, did you apply in 2020? If so, please enter your application ID. You could then also mention where they can find it. So the application ID for them can be found on their My Applications page. You can then enter a character limit, and you could say 0. We'll just not have a character limit for this. And then once we create the question, so long as it is required, they'll need to enter in specific information there. So that's a good way to kind of verify that your artists did indeed, your 2020 artists who are applying in 2021 did indeed apply and were invited in 2020, because then you can take the answers from that question and you can cross-reference them against your application IDs from 2020. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to do that a little bit later on into the webinar. For single select questions, you will have the option to, it's essentially a radio button question. You'll create a bunch of options and artists will need to select one, whether or not the question is required and what the question is. All of those fields will stay the same. For example, if you just wanted to ask like a brief yes, no, did you apply in 2020? Say you're not jurying and you're not automatically rolling over all of your 2020 artists. You just want to know if they applied in 2020. Then you could say, did you apply in 2020? And then the first answer could be yes. And the second option could be no. And that's just a really quick and easy way to put that question in there so you can, pull that in an Excel form and then use that for your internal processes. So we'll make that question as well and just go ahead and create it. The third question is multi-select. So multi-select works a lot like single select, except they get to select multiple options. So you'll build it just like you would a single select question, except then artists would be able to select more than one predetermined answer. For the drop-down list is another single select option. It just looks a bit different. It's a drop-down instead of a radio button. And then our last question type is going to be informational only. So informational only questions can be used in a variety of ways, but all artists will see is whatever the question is. So in most cases, this actually won't be a question. It'll be more like a statement. So I've seen shows put on things like, refund policy that they want artists to be sure that they read. If they didn't read it on the prospectus, they want to see it again on the application. I've seen things like an emerging artist policy written out as an informational only question before a single select kind of, are you an emerging artist? Yes or no. So they might write what qualifies as an emerging artist as an informational only question. And then we've also seen these used as section headers. So what you can do like that is you can say, hey, this is section A. This is part 1 of the application. Are you an emerging artist? Then they could answer all the questions applicable to that. You could have like a booth question section. So what are your booth preferences? You could have all your questions with that. And you could use informational only questions as the headers for those sections. The other exciting thing that we have now, which is why I built those 2 previous questions, is actually we have something called conditional logic. If you go into one of these questions and you scroll to the bottom, you have this little new feature that says enable conditional logic. If I click yes, I'll have a couple of drop downs come up. And basically I can choose to hide this question from all artists unless they answer a specific question a certain way. So for this one, say we are saying, okay, so this question is specifically for artists who are from 2020. This is please enter your application ID from 2020. And I would only want to show that question to artists who selected yes, they were 2020 artists on the radio button question we created previously. So I'll choose the 2020 question, which is what it was. So if it is yes. And so this question won't show up now until the artist says yes, they applied in 2020. If they're an artist who's brand new in 2021, they won't be asked the question, please provide your application ID, which is really helpful because then you can actually require the application ID question. If you don't use conditional logic, then you wouldn't want to require this question because it wouldn't be applicable for some of your artists. That's one of the big questions we've been getting lately is what do I do if I'm rolling over artists from 2020 to 2021? And how do I prevent other artists from applying until I know how many spaces I have? We're actually in the process of creating an event type that is called invitational only. That will essentially allow you to have like a password in front of your event. So if I went to event on this events list, say I went and I clicked apply on this event, if I was an artist and this event was invitational only, then it would essentially stop me and say, hey, you need to enter a password to apply to this event. And then you could only give that password to artists who planned on rolling over. So jury details, application custom questions, and conditional logic are 3 tools for building your application that are going to be really useful in 2021. All right, so moving on to the product editor, we do have this new feature, early bird and late fees, that's brand new. And now you can sort of create early bird or late fee jury products. So all you need to do to create that is click on the little view and update fees plus sign, and then toggle on whichever one you want to use. The start date will always be your application start date for the early bird fee, and the late fee will always end on your application deadline. You can control the end date for the early bird fee and the start date for the late bird fee, and they will take effect 12 on the dot exactly on that day, or it will end at 11:59:59 on that day, just like our other deadlines work. And you can control the time zone in your event information page. The cost for the early bird fee and the cost for the late fee, those are the actual costs. You're not going to be adding them or subtracting them from your normal jury fee cost. This will just be, your early bird fee will be $5 and your late fee will be $50. in this case. Just click save to enable them, and you want them to have at least 1 day in between. And then you'll be able to see that they're active right here. In 2021 specifically, it can be helpful if you can offer artists a discounted rate at the beginning, just because it may take a bit for people to start feeling comfortable applying to events again, and offering incentives like a lower cost if you're able is something that can encourage artists to apply a little bit earlier on so that you can get planning your event a little bit earlier on. Our fifth tool is going to be coupon codes. So coupon codes are going to be how we handle rolling over artists. So we get this question quite a bit, but a lot of events are planning on rolling over artists, and they're wondering if they can do it in ZAPP just by like kind of clicking a button and rolling people over. We can't actually do that because of the legal agreement that all artists agree to when they go to apply to your event. So they will need to apply to your 2021 event separately, but we can create coupon codes, and we have about 40% of events planned to roll over some number of applicants from 2020 to 2021. And so there are going to be quite a few artists who need to submit an application but will not need to pay the fees. So the easiest way to do that is going to be to create a coupon code. So I have one here. It's called 2020 Artists. The discount is 100%. My maximum uses is going to be the maximum number of artists that I'm offering this coupon code to, because I'm not going to want anybody to apply who is beyond the invited artist, say, for 2020. My code is going to be 2020 Artists. I'll want to change the start and the end date so that it is applicable to whatever your start and end date is. If you have a period of time during which this offer may expire, say you're not rolling over invitations so much as offering a credit on the jury fee for 2021, then you might have an expiration date on that. You'll want to also make sure the status is active, and then you'll just apply it to whatever item it applies to. So if you're rolling over both jury fees and booth fees for some of your artists, you'll probably want it to be active for more than one product, so then they can purchase those as well. When we talk mostly about booth fees, they wanted to purchase the booth fee for $0. It can seem a little bit unintuitive for them to do that, but actually that can help you sort of manage your inventory and what you have available for artists that are outside of your invited artists from 2020. Even if they're not going to be paying anything, you can still have them quote unquote purchase a booth space as a way to reserve their space. You'll just want to hit update or hit add to make the coupon code available. You will need to email it separately to your artists. So you can email them, say at that point they might be in an archived event. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the communications tool in a moment. But if they're an archived event, you could just kind of like pull it up and then select the status, say everybody ended up being accepted, when all your accepted artists are the ones who intended to roll over. Click select, and then you can just, draft your email and send them all the coupon codes so that they can use it and just kind of help monitor it that way. You can also monitor coupon codes on the events table as well as within the income breakdown report, just kind of as you're going. If you do have any questions about coupon codes in particular as you go along, we also have a couple of resources in our help center that you can use. That is going to be how do I create a coupon code, and then creating coupon codes. We also have help resources for artists on using coupon codes that we'll be pushing out there a little bit closer to when we're seeing a lot more of these events with this type of structure start to accept applications. Then we'll start, also maybe throwing them in our newsletters, the resources to use coupon codes into our newsletters so that they can do that. But you're also welcome to go to our help center, which is just on the main ZAPP page. And you can, look in here and look for the coupon code resources, and then you'll be able to, send those to your artists as you go. Is there a way to have them purchase now, make a selection, but defer payment to a later date and pay with credit card at that date? Right now, I'm telling them to mark pay by check to defer payment, but would ultimately like to process via a credit card. I think the best way to do that would be to use our deposit feature and set that for $0. So I'll walk you through that scenario right now. So if I was, managing a process like that, what I would do is go into the current event, into your event editor, and then into the product editor. And what I would create is a $0 product for however many artists that you intend to defer payment for. So I'm not quite sure how much that is, but I'll go with, let's say, $175 right now. And I'm going to call this spot reservation. I'm going to accept all payment types. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to create it as a deposit. So how that essentially is going to work is that rather than move to confirm, so when an artist purchases a booth product, they automatically move to the confirmed status. What we essentially want to do to make your process work is make sure they don't move to the confirmed status, so you know when they paid and they have the option to pay by credit card later. For the spot reservation, essentially what would happen is if I was an artist and I purchased this, I would get an automatic tag called deposit, which in this case, you could just keep in mind as this is the spot reservation. It's just going to create an automatic way for you to search for them. And then once you're ready to start accepting payments, you could create sort of the booth products that you want to create, however many that you want to, have them, pay by credit card, make sure that they're active, make sure the quantity is what you want, the price is what you want, and then have them pay for that product when that second deadline comes around. So if you wanted to manage two separate sort of purchase deadlines in that sense, one deadline for a spot reservation and one deadline for a booth reservation, when you were doing your spot reservation, I would keep your booth product not active. And then I would go to your event information and have sort of a first accept invitation and purchase deadline that is earlier than your actual payment deadline, and tell your artist, hey, you're going to need to quote unquote, check out this spot reservation product, and I will follow up with more instructions for when the actual payment is going to be due. So I'd have that first deadline be, at whatever point you need the reservation by. And then once you're ready and you have all of your reservations, make sure that anybody who didn't reserve their spot is no longer in the invited status. So the only people who can purchase booth products are going to be exempt from jury, invited, accepted, and confirmed. And so maybe you move everyone who didn't reserve their spot to withdrawn for now, or you can move them to waitlist. And then you would move your accept invitation and purchase deadline to the date you actually want them to purchase their booth products by. Go into your product editor, check the booth product as active, and then save your products. So that way, then you can turn off spot reservation as well. And that way they'll know that it's time to pay their booth products. You'll have the reservation kind of noted within ZAPP, but you'll also be able to have them pay booth products. And once they purchase the booth products, they'll move to confirmed. I know it's kind of a long process. If you have any questions or if you want it written out, just send us a quick email at zaphelp@westaff.org. You can send us a ticket as well, just with the question you just asked me, and I'm happy to write it out for you as well, so you can have kind of like a step-by-step list.
I want to go back a little ways to you were able to set up an early bird and a late fee for the application fee, but is it possible to do that for all of the booth fees as well? Because for our late applications, the booth fee goes up a amount as well.
There is no built-in late fee that I can create just off the bat. Do you have artists who are purchasing the regular booth fee at the same time you have artists purchasing the late booth fee? Or are those two processes completely separate?
Sometimes if an artist hasn't paid their booth fee on time, what we've done in the past was after the first deadline, which was in our description, our event description and everything, we then changed that date afterwards to the next deadline and went and changed all of the products as well, the prices of the products. That's how we've done it in the past. And then we changed our wording and our description to say we're now in jury 2. And here's the new deadlines and here's the new prices.
Yeah, that's probably still going to be the best way to do it for right now. You can definitely take advantage of the late fee for your, second jury round when people are applying to jury. But I will also make a note of your process just so that I can bring it up to my team for maybe a possible future enhancement. As everyone probably knows, the event management table is and always has been kind of the artist management hub of ZAPP. So it's kind of where you can keep track of who's where and who's done what, who's purchased what. And that's going to continue to be applicable, into 2021 and far beyond. It's also going to be really helpful for if you do have a non-traditional sort of event next year. So particularly with things like coupon codes, if I click on my received artists, I can see within the payment section, if you have the payment section checked, that there was a coupon code used. If you are in a situation where you're rolling over artists or you're providing coupons for artists in 2021, what you can do is once you receive their payment and once you receive them in, the receive status or maybe the awaiting payment by check status, they choose that instead, then you can go in and move them right away to exempt from jury, and it'll be really easy to see who used the coupon that you created previously to let them apply for free because it'll be right there. So say, I can see that all of these artists are from my 2020 artist group and they applied with a 100% discount. We move everybody from received to exempt from jury, or because they were invited last year, maybe I'm just going to move them right to invited so that then they have the option to accept or decline their invitation, kind of like we were talking about a little bit earlier. And that is just kind of a really quick way that you're going to be able to manage those artists on this page. If you do not see the payment section and you need to see it, then you'll just want to click that table editor button in the right-hand side and then choose the fields that you want to be active. So depending on the point in your application cycle you're at, you may choose different checkboxes. So I know some events may not be collecting, maybe any payments for booth fees next year. So maybe they don't need payments later on in their application cycle because it's more important that they have the email addresses handy. So if we save that, the table will automatically switch. Booth numbers can only be added for accepted or confirmed artists. So if you are rolling over your booth fees from 2020 to 2021 and you're not going to have them, quote unquote, purchase the space to reserve the spot, then you'll just maybe want to move these people right to confirmed. So that's one of the ways you can kind of start to use this table in a more creative way to manage your event. You can also, of course, search for any artist by name, business name, application ID, whatever category they are. So say you have an artist who applied with your coupon and you don't recognize them from your 2020 event, you can go into your archived event and maybe search for them in there to see if you can find them. And so you can kind of just switch between these two pages, maybe your archived 2020 event and your current 2021 event to sort of find out a little bit more information and do some cross-checking just on the spot if you feel the need to. On this page, you can also see status change history. So if you are an event with multiple administrators, you'll be able to see who moved each artist where. So if you do have any questions about them, particularly if you're handling a more complicated process than you typically would be handling, you can always look through the status change history to see when they were moved and by who. And then you can follow up individually, or you can say, oh, I remember doing that, last week, and now I kind of understand why they're where they are. On this page, you can also email artists directly by clicking on their email address. This is how you can email artists one at a time really easily. The next kind of big thing is going to be the answers report. So when you download the answers report, you'll get an Excel or a CVS file that you can open however you'd like. So this is just my quick demo one, and it'll include pretty much everything from, application ID to tags, what status they were in when the report was pulled, any additional information. It includes a lot of contact information. And it also includes answers to our custom questions that we created earlier on. This is how you're going to be able to really easily cross-reference your 2020 event with your 2021 event, if that's what you need. If not, this is a great place to just aggregate information from your applications. You don't have to go in individually and pull that information separately, but the information does retain year after year. Say we ask that application ID question where you say, okay, you were invited to 2020, please provide your application ID, and say it was right here. Then I could go and I could pull the answers report from the archived event for my invited group, and then I could cross-reference and use, the application ID question here with the application ID question from 2020. And if you have any that don't match, you can always search by that artist name within within either your Excel sheet or within ZAPP itself and kind of cross-reference that way. You can also use your artist history to do that as well. If you're running into issues and you just want to check to see if they applied really fast, you can just use, say, the email address or the application ID for their current event and pull up the application history for that artist, so you can check that really fast on a case-by-case basis. You might start with the cross-referencing and then move into a case-by-case basis as you go for managing a mixture of 2020 artists that have rolled over to 2021 and new 2021 artists. The early tags that we saw used on ZAPP were things like emerging artists or local artists. I've seen both of those used pretty frequently because some events have different requirements for local artists. So maybe they get like preferential treatment in some way, or they need a certain percentage of local artists in their event. So they'll tag local artists as they come in. When we go into 2021 events, we're expecting to see a lot of 2020 tags just because there'll be artists from 2020 who are in 2021. I've also seen award winner tags. Those are useful for if you are trying to reach your award winners with specific coupon codes or specific criteria. You can add a tag by clicking on the application ID and it'll appear up here. So let's say we can do like a 2020 artist. Let's say you can add up to 3 tags. If you're using deposit products, they'll create a separate tag and that will not count against your number of tags that you can use. And then on the events management page, you can search by those tags. You can show tagged artists only, so we can do that. And then I can also sort by them. So by clicking on any of these headers, I can sort the table, but I can also pull all tags to the top or push them all to the bottom on this page. And the cool thing we can do with tags now, that is a brand new enhancement, is we can actually email to those groups. So we can essentially create custom groups to email to. So if we want to do that, we're going to go to events communication. I'll just select everyone. We also have a fun new select all button. And then I can include only tagged and flagged applicants. So I can see, I have nobody I flagged, but I do have people that are tagged with the 2020, with 2 2020 artists. I can click select. I've now filtered it by the 2020 artists only, so that then I know that, hey, I'm just emailing this to the 2 artists who have been tagged 2020. So that's a really new and exciting feature on ZAPP, just because it will essentially allow you to create groups beyond the statuses. You can also exclude them. So if you say want to email everyone but your 2020 artists, you can exclude them from that group. Our very last main feature that's going to be really helpful in 2021, regardless of whether or not you have been impacted by COVID-19, is going to be the income breakdown report. We love this report. It essentially will give you your full financial breakdown. It doesn't account for licensing fees if you're auto deducting those, but it will account for credit card fees. And it also takes note of every single transaction that happens, whether that is a $0 transaction or a full booth fee. So I'm just going to select all my events. And then I'm going to just go back in time a little bit so that we can pull something up and run the report. So this is what the report looks like. Essentially, if you haven't ever opened it before, essentially you'll get the payment ID, the date the payment was made, purchaser, any coupons that were used, the credit card fee that came out, the total amount that was paid, and then the net after credit card fees, and then any details. And then at the bottom, you'll be able to see, the total amount revenue that went through ZAPP, the total that came out for credit card fees, and the total that was collected. You can also see a breakdown by credit card, check, or pending. So pending refers specifically to when a check is pending. And then you'll also see a breakdown by event. If you have multiple events, this is where you'll be able to reconcile what goes with which event. You can also download these results as an XLSX or CSV file at any time. Some of the creative ways you can use this for your event is because you might be in a position where you have a lot of $0 products or a lot of coupons being used, you will be able to filter this report to hide, say, all discounts or hide all $0 transactions. And this could be useful if you just want to see revenue that is actually coming into your event, rather than have a lot of options for $0 fees. On the flip side, if you do want to, you can definitely keep all $0 transactions active as a way to kind of monitor how many booth products you have available or how many tents have been reserved, that sort of thing. If you're doing $0 transactions, that can be really helpful. When you download this report, you'll also be able to sort by a couple of things, do anything you would want to do in Excel. So you can definitely monitor your applicants in that regard as well, in terms of who's paid for what and who paid with the 2020 coupon. So say you weren't monitoring as they came in and you weren't looking at them on the events management page. A really easy way to go back and retroactively check will be to download this report and check for anybody who used that 2020 artist coupon. The last thing I want to mention about the income breakdown report is that if you want to see any money that hasn't been paid out to you via ZAPP at that time, all you'll want to do is go to the current year, and then the first of the current month to the date, to today's date of the current month, and then you'll want to click hide all checks. All check payments always go directly to you, so we don't ever collect them and resend them, so they'll never be a part of what's paid out. And then you'll just want to click run report. And at the bottom of this, we've done some test refunds on here. So you can see I've collected negative $150, but say that was an actual $150, that would be the total amount that you then would be paid out. And that's how you can check that. That's also how you can check to see if ZAPP can process your refunds. We're kind of in a special place with refunds right now where a huge chunk of our resources and priorities are processing mass refunds. But once our resources even out a little bit more and we start to be able to process one-off refunds as well, then you can use this report with these exact settings, first of the current month to the current day with hide all checks. You can use that report to see if you have the funds in ZAPP to have us refund those artists, that an artist who requested a refund on your behalf. Typically, we can do that. We're just in a bit of a special situation now. If you do have a special circumstance, you really need us to refund somebody who's just a one-off, just let us know. And that's the income breakdown report. So the first question I had was specific to rollovers. What is the best way to handle rollovers since at least 50% from this year opted for that one we canceled, and will there be a charge for ZAPP for those applications? So the best way to roll over artists is going to be creating the coupon code like we talked about. This is going to allow them to agree to your new legal agreement for 2021, answer any new questions. So say you need to ask, say, that application ID question, this will give you the opportunity to collect that information, and then they can submit any new images as well. So, if you're creating new marketing materials for 21, then you might want them to resubmit those images. Normal charges will still apply, but you won't have any credit card fees associated with $0 transactions. So that is a fee that will be off your plate, essentially. Second question is, any strategies for having a virtual show if we have to cancel? So virtual events are something that we haven't had a lot of experience with here on ZAPP. This is kind of in the first year we've even seen a bunch of them pop up. And so there are kind of various considerations that we ask that you keep in mind. In a typical year, we wouldn't recommend switching to a virtual event halfway through your application cycle because artists applied for an event that is no longer in the format they applied for. However, we understand that in this current time, you may be in the position where you need to offer a virtual event, or you're trying to do that to generate revenue for your artists. If that is the case, ensure you're reconfirming the interest to participate with your artists and that they're okay having their fees go to that. So if you've juried, you don't necessarily need to worry about it quite as much, but things like booth fees probably are not going to transition from a physical event to a virtual event. In terms of artist testimonials about them, the overall opinion is that they don't seem to work very much, but some artists do find success, though not at the same level as an in-person event. And the general strategies that we've seen involve a longer period of time during which the event is open and artists can sell their work, an involved artist base that is also pushing their event to their mailing list and their social following. So it becomes kind of more of a, you're working with your artists, not just bringing patrons to them as you would typically, and low to no fees to be a part of that event. That's just because they don't see the same success they would see in a physical event. So a lot of them are a lot more willing to try if the fees are a little bit lower or are low in general. We have seen a couple of different ways in which events are going virtual. Some are promoting artists on their website and social media, while others are looking at platforms that incorporate sales directly so that artists can actually sell through their site. If you're planning to simply share images on your websites and social media, just make sure you have express permission from the artist to do that, and that you have web-ready images and not the high-quality images that could be easily copied and posted illegally onto another site. The next question is, what are some examples of what shows are doing for fall and winter shows? We have quite a few fall and winter shows that are still anticipating moving ahead. I know I talked to an event just this morning that was hoping to move ahead with like an August event. But many are extending their timelines and delaying artist payments as much as possible in the event of a forced cancellation. So kind of as Vince talked about, they don't have the same cash flow issues. The other important thing when you're sort of working with, fall and winter events in 2020 is that you're sharing hard and fast decision dates, such as the last day you will cancel if you do cancel. So they can look out and they can say, okay, I know that on July 1st, I'm going to know whether or not this event is happening. Say it's a September event, I'm going to know on July 1st whether or not it's happening, whether or not I should plan on it. Other successful events are sending continuous emails to provide updates, including latest local regulations. So they can ask artists essentially, will they still feel comfortable participating if masks are required, if they need to have hand sanitizer in their tent. So shows are sharing how they're trying to figure out all of that, including limiting public access points to comply with social distancing and hygiene requirements. So sharing all that information with artists can be really helpful so that they're, buying into your event, they're aware of what they're getting into, and so they can be prepared essentially. And they can also make the decision to drop out if it's something that they feel like they're in too vulnerable a position to put themselves in a festival like that. Sharing local information can help them feel more confident or give the tools they need to make the decision to not participate that year. Sad as that is for everybody, we also want, of course, everyone to be safe and feel comfortable and safe at events. So sharing local regulations on social distancing and how your region is accommodating it, and any additional requirements like masks or hand sanitizer, pathways, that sort of thing can help artists feel a little bit more secure in your event. Next question is going to be, we are currently reviewing all information for our April 2021 show. Our show's altering timelines or adding additional text. What are recommendations for opening applications for 2021 shows with so much uncertainty? So yes, shows are altering their timelines. Most are doing so to give artists more time to apply and purchase products. Similar to how we talked about earlier, people are just trying to push purchasing the actual product as far as they can while still being comfortable, just so that artists have time to commit and they have time to know whether or not that event is going to be able to go on in your individual area. At this point in time, it's really about showing your artists that you stand with them and are trying to accommodate their needs as much as possible, as they've been hit by the pandemic just as hard as everybody else, if not harder. In terms of additional text, the keys are going to be a refund policy that specifically mentions the virus and what you will do if it impacts your event, and letting artists know whether or not you're jurying for additional spaces. Those are the two big issues I see come up a lot amongst artist chatter, because it hasn't been consistent in terms of what shows are deciding to do when they cancel. They're going to want to know what the refund policy is and what their chances of essentially jurying in are going to be. Making your prospectus as clear and transparent as possible is pretty much essential to gaining trust at that point so that they feel comfortable applying. If you're prepared to offer payment plans for booth payments, you can also mention those in your prospectus so that they know, what the payment plan is going to be, and they know whether or not that's something they can do. Yeah. So the main things are just creating trust and putting that in your prospectus as much as possible. And that's just doing things like having artist-friendly policies and making sure that the information that they want to know, things like notification dates, booth payments, refund information, cancellation information. If you are concerned that you might cancel your early spring 2021 event, if you have a hard and fast notification date for when you would cancel, I would include that as well. My last question is, what are your anticipations for the ways in which the pandemic is likely to affect early 2021 festivals? How do we evaluate the ongoing situation as we get closer to the early and middle phase of planning? We're anticipating lots of coupon codes coming through, lots of rolling over from 2020 to 2021. Lower application numbers, particularly in cases where shows are not having that transparency that I just talked about, because that is going to be essential for making artists feel comfortable applying. And we're kind of concerned that if that transparency isn't there and artists don't apply, there'll be a wave of cancellations that isn't strictly because they couldn't hold the event due to the pandemic, but rather because they didn't receive enough candidates. So the best way you can avoid that is just, being as transparent as possible, keeping in communication with your artists, and making sure that you have clear plans in place for how you will be affected and when you'll know if you'll be affected.
Do you guys have a way to refund all of the booth fees, right? There was some kind of mechanism that if we decided to, if it were called off after the booth fees were paid, that we could refund all of those through ZAPP, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, we could handle that for you.
Okay. And there's a fee, like a flat fee for doing that, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the basic process for refunding any product and in en masse like this, specifically for this period of time, is that once we receive notice that you are canceling your event and that you want to refund a certain product, be that a jury fee or in this case a booth fee, for all of your artists, what will happen is we will send you a full breakdown, which includes, what the total cost would be. And the flat fee that you're mentioning is our mass refund processing fee. It depends on how many refunds we're processing on your behalf. It typically maxes out at $100 for the whole process. And that includes, refunding, everybody. And we refund typically in about 2 weeks. It's typically faster, but we give you a timeline of 2 weeks just in case it gets really crazy for whatever reason. But artists will receive a confirmation email once the refund is processed. It'll show in ZAPP. It'll show on your end in ZAPP. And we can handle that all. If you do have any questions that didn't get answered, or if you want any clarification on things I talked about, feel free to shoot us an email, zapphelp@weststaff.org, ZAPPHELP@weststaff.org.